Today I want to share with you how to make a traditional French pumpkin soup. This is a 17th century heirloom recipe. Hi sweet friends, I'm Mary and welcome to Mary's Nest, where I teach traditional cooking skills for making nutrient-dense foods like bone broth, ferment, sourdough, and more. So if you enjoy learning how to be a modern pioneer in the kitchen, consider subscribing to my channel. And don't forget to click on the little notification bell below. That'll let you know every time I upload a new video. If at any time you want to jump ahead in this video, I'll have detailed timestamps in the description and in the pinned comment below. I'll also have a link to my website, Mary's Nest, same name as my YouTube channel, where I'll have the printable recipe. In 1651, a French gentleman named Francois Pierre, who used the nom de plume, or pen name La Varenne, wrote a cookbook called Cuisinier Francois. Well, in that original cookbook, he had recipes for pumpkin soup. Eventually, the cookbook was translated into English, and pumpkin soup also became popular in England. And today, in many places of the world, pumpkin soup is a very popular dish. But what are the origins of pumpkin? Well, they're very interesting because pumpkin seeds were discovered by archaeologists in northern Mexico, and they were carbon dated back to about 7,500 or 7,000 BC. And eventually, over time, pumpkin seeds made their way around the world. The pumpkin soup that we're going to make today is a very traditional French pumpkin soup, and it calls for a particular type of pumpkin, and that pumpkin is called a rouge vif d'étampes. Now don't worry if you don't have that exact pumpkin. There are a lot of other pumpkins you can use, which we're going to talk about. What rouge vif translates to in English basically means lively red because the pumpkins have such a beautiful color to them. And the second part of the pumpkin's name, étampes, simply is the name of the village in which these pumpkins tend to come from. Now this particular pumpkin is not a rouge vif d'étampes, and that's what we're going to talk about. Now living in Central Texas, I'm not able to find a rouge vif d'étampes pumpkin. However, I am able to find something similar. I saved the tag so that I could show it to you, and this is actually called an autumn couleur pumpkin. The way they've spelled couleur is very much in the French way rather than the English way, and I think that's to basically give a nod to the rouge vif d'étampes pumpkin. But this is an heirloom pumpkin, just like the rouge vif d'étampes, in the sense that they bred this, and I don't know if it technically qualifies as heirloom, but they used a number of heirloom varieties of pumpkin to create this pumpkin. And this pumpkin is very similar in style to the original rouge vif d'étampes. So this is the pumpkin we'll be using today to make our traditional French soup. And I have to tell you that the rouge vif d'étampes, I have fun saying that, although forgive me to my French friends if my pronunciation isn't very good, but you have a beautiful language. It's fun to say these names of foods and so on and so forth. But what's so interesting about that pumpkin is stories say that Walt Disney was inspired by the rouge vif d'étampes pumpkin when he and his staff designed the coach for Cinderella, the pumpkin that turned into her coach. So that's a cute little bit of trivia. Alrighty, now, when you're cutting into a pumpkin, any pumpkin, now if you've got one of these heirloom pumpkins, this is fantastic, and your best bet. And today there's a lot of heirloom pumpkins out there. You may see this referred to in the general sense of as like a Cinderella pumpkin. There's also fairy tale pumpkins and heirloom pumpkins and so on and so forth. So if you can find something like that, and it seems as though the grocery stores and the farmers markets and the specialty stores, these types of pumpkins are becoming more common and more easy to find. I found this right in my local Austin area, so if I can find this in Central Texas, hopefully you can find it in your part of the U.S. or your part of the world. And as a last resort, if all you can find are the little, I think they're called the little sugar pumpkins that people usually make pumpkin pie with, you can use those too. You'll just need more. And that will probably make a slightly sweeter soup, which would be lovely. We're not going to add any sugar to this soup. Sometimes you see pumpkin soups that'll include in the ingredients adding sugar. But in the 17th century, sugar was a luxury. So it might have been unlikely that it would have been added to a pumpkin soup. Because recipes like this, my mother, my Italian mother, would call this type of cooking cucina povera. Now, that translates to like poor kitchen or peasant food, poor food, something along those lines. But the interesting thing is that today, none of this is poor cooking or poor food or from a poor kitchen or peasant food. Many of these foods that were considered cucina povera, and the French and other countries as well have their similar terms for this type of cooking, most of it has become very gourmet today. For example, roasted marrow bones, that will be an appetizer sometimes at very fancy restaurants and very expensive. Bone broth is expensive, and that's truly a food of the poor. And things like beef bourguignon and cassoulet, all of these things, these were just simple meals that farmers and people in small towns prepared with what they had. And that's what I love about these type of recipes. They make use of simple ingredients, yet they're exceptionally tasty. Alrighty, now let's go over the ingredients that we're going to need to make this pumpkin soup. You're going to want a pumpkin and about 5 or 6 pounds or so. And then you're going to need 8 cups of some type of chicken broth. You can use a simple chicken broth, you can use a chicken stock, or you can use a roast chicken bone broth, which is what I've got here. And I've got a recipe and a video to show you how to make that. I love it because you basically make it just with the carcass of the chicken and scraps. You make it for pennies. So some chicken bone broth or whatever you've got. If you want to keep this leaning more to the vegetarian, you could use a vegetable broth. But the chicken broth is a little more, or chicken stock, it's a little more traditional. But do what works best for your particular way of eating. The next thing you're going to need are 2 leeks, 1 onion. I've just got a medium-sized yellow onion here. And then you're going to want 1/3 cup of cream and about 3 tablespoons of butter and about 2 tablespoons of olive oil. I've actually got some Texas olive oil here to go with my Texas pumpkin. Maybe I should be calling it Texas pumpkin soup. And then just some salt and pepper, and if you've got it, some nutmeg. And the only other thing you're going to need are some fresh herbs. Now, if you don't have fresh herbs, can you use dried herbs? Yes. You'll just want to pull back a little on the amounts because dried herbs are always a little stronger than the fresh. But you're going to want some sage, some rosemary, and some thyme. Now we're going to cut this pumpkin in half. Now I have read that sometimes these pumpkins are easier to cut through than the very round, domesticated, or I guess I should say more domesticated pumpkins that we see for jack-o'-lanterns and things like that. But I suspect we're going to need a very sharp knife, so that's what I've got here. I also pulled out a serrated knife. I don't know if that might help, but we'll just do our best. Alrighty, let's see how this is going to go. Oh yeah, it's definitely firm, but I think as we work our way through, we'll be able to, my knife is sticking, we'll be able to cut this in half. Alrighty, so I'm working my way through this little by little. It's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. So this is fascinating, and I'll bring you in so that you can see up closer, but you will be able to see how thin the skin on this pumpkin is. So yeah, once I got through, my knife was sticking a little. You'll probably have a sharper knife than me. but the skin on this is very thin. So once I got going, it really wasn't all that difficult to cut this in half. And you know, I have to tell you, these type of pumpkins have a certain lovely flavor. Now, can you make a pumpkin soup with canned pumpkins? Certainly you can, but I wanted to do something very traditional for you. And when I made the pumpkin pie from the Laura Ingalls cookbook, the Little House on the Prairie cookbook, and I used canned pumpkin. Some of you said, oh, I was hoping you would start with a real pumpkin. So this is for you. I'm starting with a real pumpkin. I think you'll find the seeds very interesting. My sweet husband Ted was helping me take pictures of the interior of the pumpkin, and he commented on how large the seeds look, and they do in fact look quite a bit larger than pumpkin seeds you see at the store that are for sale to eat. But this is very interesting. Now you can get right into this pumpkin and just start pulling everything out with clean hands. But I always find using a serrated spoon whenever I'm doing a job like this, whether it's with pumpkins or squash, I find these serrated spoons make the job nice and easy. Yeah, having that serrated spoon really makes nice quick work of this. And boy, if you're able to get some type of pumpkin, some type of heirloom pumpkin in this Cinderella or fairy tale variety, the aroma, oh, I think the soup is going to be delicious. The aroma is fantastic. It's like very fruity, very unusual. I like it. Okay, I'm just going to get a little bit more of this stringiness out, and then we'll move on to the other one, and then we'll go to the next step that involves peeling the pumpkin. But again, this is so thin and actually very tender in many ways, so I don't anticipate that'll be much of a job. Well, I got a lot of seeds out of this pumpkin, and I'm definitely going to fish all of them out. I'm going to experiment with roasting them. I've never roasted heirloom pumpkin seeds before. And if you notice, I've got another one behind me. I'm going to save that one. I'm going to make a pumpkin tart. So it's all pumpkin. But I think between that pumpkin and this pumpkin, I'm going to have a lot of pumpkin seeds. This is going to be fun. Well, I'm going to experiment with two ways of peeling this pumpkin. I've got a paring knife here, and I have to say it does come off very easily. I've got pieces flying. But look at this. I'll show you maybe from this end when I'm just going around there. See how easy that comes off? So it's actually very easy to peel. But I'm also going to try it with what I normally think of as the potato peeler. And I'll see, I don't know if that's going to work. Let's see. Oh yeah, this works even better. Oh, look at that. This comes off very easily. I mean, it's going to take a little time, but if you've ever peeled a pumpkin before. But I love how this works because it really just shaves it. It takes very little of the flesh. This actually went very well once I figured out the smart way to do this. And I was going like up and down like I'm peeling a potato. What makes much more sense is if you just go across like this, and I was using this one, and only reverting to this one if I had like a little area that I couldn't quite catch the skin with. And then around the stem, I just used a paring knife. That was the easiest. But as you'll see from the video, if you just go across like this, it comes off in nice long ribbons. And it's relatively easy to do. Now let's clean up this piece, and we'll move on to the next step. Boy, once you get the hang of this, it's a breeze. Well, these cleaned up beautifully, and it went a lot faster than I anticipated. Now all we need to do is cut these into about 1-inch chunks, just something that will cook up easily. So as I said, I'm just cutting this up into chunks. And I have to tell you, my husband came in to take a picture so that I can share a close-up with you for about the size of the chunk that I'm cutting this into. And we both remarked that it looks like cantaloupe, and you're going to be surprised if you're able to get this pumpkin. It smells like cantaloupe. That's what I said when I first cut it open and I was cleaning it out. I said to, I think I might have shared it with you, or I can't remember if I said it to myself or shared it with you, that it had a fruity aroma. And it's funny, but this looks like a slice of cantaloupe. And it smells like it. It's very unusual. I think this soup's going to be delicious. Well, I've got my pumpkin all cubed up. This is going to feed a crowd. I just hope I can fit it all in my soup pot, but this is just so darn cute for this time of year. I had to use it. Well, the first thing that we're going to do is put in 2 tablespoons of olive oil, and I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. And I'm going to set my burner to medium heat. And I know so many of you have asked me about this little tabletop burner. Yes, I really like it. It's a Cuisinart countertop burner, and I believe it's still available. And if so, I'll put a link in the description below. And the only thing I'll tell you is that it does tend to run hot, so I got to keep an eye on it. But it makes it perfect for canning. If you're doing water bath canning. And so I highly recommend it. But if you need an extra burner at holiday time, I think it works great. The next thing we're going to do is slice up our leeks. And the part of the leek that we want to use is the white part and then up to the light green part. But don't throw this green part away. I have a recipe that I share with you where I basically just kind of shred these green tops, and I toss them in olive oil and then throw in some spaghetti. It's delicious. It's got that lovely kind of onion flavor. Or you can put it in your bone broth, add them to your scrap bag. There's a lot that you can do with them, so don't throw them out. And the same with these ends. Definitely save these and put them in your scrap bag. Or if you've seen my video where I show you how to grow vegetables from scraps, you can try this. You can try putting these in a little water and they'll start to grow. And then you can plant them. Some people will go ahead and plant them directly into the soil. But so don't throw those out. Okay, next what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut these green tops off. We're going to save this, as I mentioned. I actually think I'm going to do that spaghetti recipe with these. It was so tasty. My husband and I were inhaling it. Alrighty, let me set those aside. I just want to give these a good wash. I'm going to actually just sort of split them a little and make sure that I get all the sand and the dirt out because leeks do tend to be kind of on the dirty side. So now that I've got my leeks all nice and clean, I'm just going to go ahead and just chop them up, just a rough chop, nothing fancy. We're going to saute these, but when everything is said and done, when everything's cooked, we're going to puree the whole thing. So how everything is chopped isn't of paramount importance. Just to help it cook, just have it chopped to a point where it's easy to cook up. Because this soup only takes about 30 or 40 minutes. It's just a matter of how long it takes to get the pumpkin soft. Now I'm going to go ahead and put my leeks into the olive oil. Ooh, listen to that sizzle. Nice. Alrighty, I'm just going to toss that around a little. And then I'm going to go ahead and just sprinkle a teaspoon of salt over the top. And I'm just using a fine ground sea salt. If you follow a salt-free diet, you can leave this out. The only reason I'm putting this in is, yes, for flavor, and it also helps the onions sweat nicely, both the leeks and the onions, which is coming up next. Now, as you peel your onion, don't throw out your onion scraps. Onion skins are very nutritious, so you want to save these, just as nutritious as the onion. And so add these to your scrap bag, and when you get ready to make bone broth, just throw these right in instead of having to peel a whole onion. And what's really nice about having these kind of scraps, not only do they add nutrition, if you make the roast chicken bone broth that we talked about earlier, and you're using all your scraps, your onion scraps, your carrot shavings, the bottom of the celery, leek greens, if you decide to save those and use those instead of with the spaghetti recipe, all of this has flavor and it basically costs you very little. So that's why I say you can make roast chicken bone broth with the chicken carcass and scraps for pennies. Now I'm going to go ahead and put in the first half of my onion. We're going to use the whole onion. Next, we're going to work on our herbs. Now, I'm going to put in, I'm going to just put in this whole bunch. Sage and onions and pumpkin, it goes together beautifully. Now, this is fresh sage, and I'm going to chop this up finely, and I'm suspecting you just finely, even though we are pureeing it so it really releases all of its essential oils, maybe about, if you've got chopped fresh thyme already, and it's chopped, about a tablespoon maybe. What I would recommend if you are going with dried thyme, then only go with about a teaspoon. Now this may be a little more than a tablespoon once it's all chopped up, but it'll be great. Now I'm going to save these stems. You'll see what we're going to do. Well, maybe it's about a tablespoon. I don't know. It's hard to tell. And, I often feel this isn't an exact science. It's okay if it's a little more or a little less. But what I do like is that the flavor of sage, even as I'm cutting it right now, the fragrance is amazing. And then I'll go, once I get this just kind of nice and chopped up, I'll go ahead and add it in with our onions and leeks. Alrighty, I've got this sage chopped up nice, and I'm just going to go ahead and put that right into our soup pot. Gorgeous. And now I'm just going to spin this around a bit to mix it up. Already, the minute it hits the hot pan, you already can start to smell it. Now I'm just going to go ahead and put in a couple of sprigs of thyme. I'm going to put these in just as is, and then before we puree it, we'll fish it out, but we'll basically, some of the leaves will already have come off the stems during the cooking process, and if not, we'll just sort of push them off with our fingers and get them into the soup. But no need to worry about trying to do that ahead of time. So this looks like a nice sprig. I'll put that in. It's got a lot of little sprigs on it, and let's see, maybe we'll get another one like that that's got some. This looks like a good one too. So I'm going to go ahead and put those 2 sprigs in. I'll save this for other recipes. Now let's talk about the rosemary. You got to be careful with rosemary because you don't want anything too strong. Rosemary can become very overpowering very quickly. And you could remove these leaves and chop them up real fine if you wanted, but what I would rather do is take them with the sage stems and put them together and basically take one of these leaves. I'm going to go ahead and rinse this off. You see what I was talking about, how dirty the leeks can be? And I'm going to tie this up. We're going to throw it in, and so the rosemary will add gentle flavor, but not too strong a flavor, because to a lot of people, rosemary can quickly taste soapy, and that's the last thing you want in your soup. So let me clean this up and I'll show you how I use this. I'm going to take my knife, and all I'm going to do is just take one piece off the edge of my leek green, just like making almost like a little piece of string. Now I'm going to take the rosemary and the little sage stems, and I'm going to put them right into this leek green. And I'm just going to fold it up. I'm going to cut the leek green to the size that I want, that I feel will accommodate this, and then we're going to tie it with this string, the string we made from the leaf green, our edible string. Now, in essence, we have our little bouquet garni. So we'll go ahead and we'll just put this in the soup, and that'll help flavor it with a little bit of that rosemary. And of course, the extra sage from the stems and a little more leek. Alrighty, now let's start putting our pumpkin, our cut up pumpkin in here. You may want to get a bigger pot than I'm using, but I couldn't resist, as I said earlier, using this. It's so darn cute. But let's see how much we can get in here. Alrighty, well, I'm shocked I was able to get all that in there. But yes, I think a slightly bigger soup pot will make this job easier, but this is going to be fun. Now I just am going to not worry too much about trying to mix it up. First of all, everything's a little tight in here, but also too, the chicken bone broth will do the job for me. Now I'm going to go ahead and pour in our bone broth here. Whoops, made a little mess on the other side. Then once I get all this in, I'm going to bring this up to a boil. Then once it comes up to the boil, I'll turn it down to a simmer, and then we will let this simmer 30 to 40 minutes, just until the pumpkin is tender, and then we'll go ahead and puree everything. So I brought this up to a boil, immediately turned it down to a low simmer, put the lid on, and let it simmer, and I checked it at about 20 minutes, and the pumpkin is beautifully soft, ready to be pureed. But you know, I have to say, even just served like this, kind of like a chunky pumpkin soup, I think it'd be delicious. And sorry if you're hearing a hum in the background. I've got my little tabletop oven going because I'm toasting some baguettes that I'll serve on the side with this. I think that'll be perfect. My husband and I are going to enjoy this for dinner. Now I fished out all the thyme twigs, and as you can see, the leaves came right off. And while it was simmering. If they don't, you can just let them cool a little, and then you can just sort of pull the leaves off. And I fished out the bouquet garni. So now what we're going to do is, was it Emeril Lagasse who used to call, the famous chef and cookbook author, who used to call this the boat motor? Now we're going to go and puree this. If you don't have one of these, don't worry. Just let it cool a little and then puree it in batches in your blender. Okay, here we go. And I just want to mention, this is off. Once I found that the pumpkin was perfectly tender and ready to be pureed, I turned the heat off. Okay, here we go. Well, the soup is beautifully pureed now. It only took me about a minute or so. I was being very careful since the pot is very full and the soup is very hot. But it only took me about a minute. And so that wasn't bad at all. Now I'm going to go ahead and swirl in the 3 tablespoons of butter. Get that melting in there. And then we'll go ahead and add in the cream, making this extra delicious. Well, I've got that butter nicely mixed in. It's all melted. Oh, this is going to be very tasty, I think. Now I'm just going to go ahead and add in the cream. We're going to really be good. Now we're just going to take a little whole nutmeg and we're going to grate that over the top. Now, like with rosemary, with nutmeg, you also want to go easy. So I would say we're grating in case you're using already pre-grated nutmeg, no more than 1/4 teaspoon. So I'm just going to go in, but this has a way of just kicking up the flavors with the green herbs. It's going to be lovely. Yeah, maybe I'd say maybe even 1/8 teaspoon, to be honest with you. Not much. And what we'll do is we'll taste it. Yeah, not much. Alrighty, so I grated in a bit of nutmeg. I'm going to stir that in, and then we'll give this a little taste test. And we'll see how it is. We'll see if we need additional salt, if we want to add in any grated black pepper. We'll just give it a little taste. I got a little tasting spoon here. But then I want to show you the really cute way that I'm going to plate this up for dinner. But first, let's just give this a taste. It's very hot. That's delicious. You know, I'm not going to add any additional salt. I think that's perfect the way that it is. And this pumpkin, boy, the flavor of the pumpkin, I love it. So I'm going to leave this the way it is. We can always add a little additional salt and pepper at the table if we want, but personally I think it's perfect. Okay, let me show you how I'm going to plate it up. Look at this darling covered soup dish. I just think it's so cute. I just have two of them, so one for me, one for my husband. But if Ben is home with us and I'm making something like this, I'm going to give it just for Ted and Ben. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and fill this, and then I'll show you what we'll do. I just think croutons definitely lend themselves to this soup. And you could do a couple of different things. You could either put them on top, or you could serve it on the side, or you could even put it on top. And if you like the way onion soup is, you could maybe grate a little Gruyere cheese over it, put the crouton into the soup, grate a little Gruyere cheese over it. That might be extremely tasty. But I think maybe just having some plain baguettes to dip right in, oh gosh, I think it'll be wonderful. Look at this, it's so cute. Oh my gosh, and I've got some toasted baguettes right here. And you could just kind of dip them in if you wanted and then put the lid on. How cute would that be? Well, let's give it a taste dipping with the baguette. Oh, I think this is going to be wonderful. Perfect. And I definitely think a little Gruyere cheese melted on top of here will be even more perfect. Well, if you'd like more traditional recipes like this, heirloom recipes, as well as a whole host of recipes that also use up scraps like we talked about with the leek greens, be sure to click on this video over here where I have lots of soup recipes, meal recipes, and cooking with scrap recipes. And I'll see you over there in my Texas Hill Country kitchen. Love and God bless.